Sent.
Yeah, ready?
Alright.
1, 2, 3, let's go. What is going on, all you awesome superhero aficionados? This is the Heroes and Mutants podcast. I'm Nick, Mike with my co-hosts Jimmy and Eric. This is your number one source of superhero talk. We have a very special guest with us today, my very, very good friend. So excited for him to be here. Ryan, thank you for joining us today, man.
How's it going, guys?
What's up?
So when we bring a new guest on, we typically have them introduce themselves, talk about how at what point they became a fan, or what point you realize, like, hey, I'm not just watching this casually. I'm actually a passionate fan about this, and who your favorite character is. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so starting off, I would say I became an avid fan of not just comics, but just like general, media, nerd culture, geek culture, I guess what they call it nowadays. Probably around like 1996 when I was just like a few years old. What got really hooked on me because not just my dad was like a huge Spawn fan.
Oh,
But
yeah.
he has like the whole like first print collection. But
So do I. The first issue 1 through
he has
issue 1 through 13. Actually,
and it's just sitting in a box like somewhere in his garage. He just has it. I hope it's still mint. Anyways, but what really got me really interested was it all started from the original X-Men cartoon. And then to top it off, like my uncle was a comic collector as well, and so he had all the Uncanny X-Men comics. So the times between the shows, I wanted to know what happened next. So I was like, oh yeah, this is what happened next. And so one of the very first comics like I completely read was Days of Future Past.
Nice.
So yeah, I was a huge X-Men fan at that time.
Nice. Who would you say is your favorite comic character?
My favorite comic character? It's kind of hard to think about it like right on the spot because there's I always go through phases like, oh yeah, like let's say like around like 2016, like my favorite comic character at the time was like Iron Fist.
I remember that.
Of all time, I love Magneto. I know he's not a hero, but I love his character development over time, and then all the times I write him in. It's just an awesome character overall.
Definitely.
I guess it sounds kind of weird because he's not.
No. I actually wanted to say that I seem to have a couple things in common. I used to bond with my dad over comic books, and I remember getting like all the first run issues of Spawn.
Yeah.
And also, Magneto is my favorite character from X-Men. Even though he's not a hero, that's one of my favorite comic book characters.
He's a villain sometimes, but he's like an anti-villain sometimes.
But he's interesting. He's complex.
Exactly.
There's a lot there. Yeah, Magneto's a great character.
Overall, I think it's because everybody. I mean, everybody wants to rally, but you don't exactly want him to win, but you kind of rally behind him because he's fighting for what he believes in, and he has like an altruistic means and something that is good. It's just he's going about because of everything he's been through with the Holocaust and his own experience. He doesn't exactly mean by going about it in peaceful times and peaceful measures. And
exactly.
Stuff,
it's just like he's been through more pain than most people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, the fact that he has to go through it, and especially because he's a mutant, he's going through it consistently, not just as, like a Holocaust Jew, but, continuing on as a mutant, he's consistently being discriminated and he's consistently fighting against it.
Exactly. Well, excellent addition here, man. We thank you so much for joining us. And also, Ryan is a very talented photographer, and he actually has his own business. So we're going to link those in the description of this video. So make sure you check them out and hit him up for any photography coffee needs. He's the man for that. So for you to be here, Ryan. I'm very excited for this.
Oh yeah, no problem.
So moving on from that, we're going to get started today. And this is something that's been in development for a while, and we kind of felt like something might have been coming, just given the fact of all the fallout that Warner Brothers has been suffering from this with actors and the abuse and stuff like that. So Amber Heard testified in court that her role as Mera has been cut in Aquaman 2, that WB wanted to drop her, but she fought to stay in the movie. There's been no official word on this by director James Wan or WB, but if this is the case, do you guys feel her role should have just been entirely recast, or especially just because of how substantial a character Mera is in Aquaman's universe and world? Do you guys think her role should have just been recast? And eventually, is that going to happen?
What do you think, Eric?
I don't think she should be recast. I just think we don't need Mera. We don't need her. Like, she wasn't even that necessary in the first Aquaman. Like, let's be honest. I think not many people are familiar with Aquaman lore enough to really think that she's a necessary character in those stories. Everyone's watching it for Aquaman, right? Like that's why we watch those movies. I don't think she needs to be recast. I think we just write her out and not see her ever again. I think that wouldn't be a problem. There's so many other characters that we can bring into the Aquaman series that matter so much more.
You know, I didn't consider that, but you're right. There's actually no reason to recast her. We don't really even need that character. And I try to avoid saying things that are too controversial, but I don't think I think she's a little bit too problematic for the studio at this point. And yeah, I'm not going to wad into that too much, but yeah, she should. I don't think we need her in the franchise anymore. Personally, I don't think that people should get recast because of controversies in their personal life, but this has been dragged out way too much on a public stage that I don't really think it's good for Warner Brothers brand. And there is a lot of people who are not going to want to see the movie on the general principle of her being in it. It is going to hurt Warner Brothers. She's way too controversial.
I think there's a petition on change.org to get her kicked off, and it's been over like a 7-figure signature. So that's a lot of money that's going to cost Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
I know there's actually another petition that I saw to digitally remove her from the first movie.
That's hilarious.
I was like, that'd be hilarious. Just cut all her scenes.
Or because I remember now just jumping off the topic slightly, I remember people wanted to recasted by Emilia Clarke. And I think it'd be hilarious if someone did a deep fake of it for the first movie.
Game of Thrones all over again.
What do you think about all this, Ryan? Should she be recast in the future, or should she just be entirely written out?
I think it makes a good point that they don't need to highlight Mara as much anymore. The only reason I can think about it is if they happen to do like a Flashpoint part of it. But aside from that, there really is no reason. There are so many other characters around Aquaman that they could just revolve around of, especially she's not even his main partner in terms of what's going on right now. You have Aqualad, you have both Aqualads, and you have so much more that you can build up off of.
Yep. I think that would be pretty cool as far as supporting characters go, just because obviously Garth and Kaldura are two awesome characters. Yeah. It would be a way to dive deeper into Aquaman's world and not so much from a love interest perspective. I think that was honestly one of the cool things that Shang-Chi had going for it, was that him and Shang-Chi and Katie weren't love interests, and it didn't play off that whole dynamic on something that we knew and something that was familiar and was offering a little bit of something different. So that part was cool. I didn't exactly think about it because I'm obviously a huge Aquaman fan and I love the comics, and Mara is a big staple of that. So did I freeze?
Yeah. I think your video fire. And really weird part.
It's a great face.
It's perfect. I think you could stay like that. We'll have that as your avatar for the rest of the podcast.
Yeah, right. Do
you want me to pause this real quick?
Yeah, sorry.
Do you guys hear?
All right, let's go. So, like I said, that was one of the good things that Shang-Chi had going for it, was the fact that him and Katie, they were more playing off of a friendly dynamic, and it wasn't off of a love story, something, not that there's anything wrong with it, but I think that trope is just so played out in superhero media and movies. So doing something where they say, okay, we're just going to cut Mara out of the film, we're going to incorporate Garth, we're going to incorporate Kaldur, and maybe go a little bit deeper into Atlantis and how he's seen as a king. I think that would be a really cool thing, and him kind of becoming a mentor to these characters. I think that could be something that can have something going for it in the future, and I would definitely be interested to see how that would all play out.
Whatever Warner Brothers does, I hope they don't shit the bed with this situation.
Pun intended.
Yes.
A lot of pun intended. And moving on from that, we actually got a couple trailers. We got our first full trailer. We had a little bit of a teaser trailer a couple months ago for She-Hulk. Now we get our first trailer for it. First impressions, and do you expect this series to be good? Start with Eric first.
Dude, I was just excited that Frogman was in there. Dude, so at first I was watching the trailer, and then I watched that part. I finished the trailer, I went back to it. I was like, because for a split second I thought it was Kick-Ass because it had the green and the yellow. I was like, that's not right. And I go back and I look at it, I was like, oh my goodness, that's Frogman, and it's hilarious that they're bringing in Frogman, and it kind of makes sense, right? Like, I really want to see where they go with She-Hulk. I know that obviously she's a lawyer. She specializes in superhero law, so I'm almost expecting like a comedy series where maybe Frogman has gotten into some trouble because he is a superhero, but he's just kind of bad at it. And that's just the comic book lore of Frogman and who he is. Like, he's trying to be a superhero, but he just kind of gets lucky sometimes. Other times he's just kind of in the background. And I just think it's funny. Maybe he's going to be one of her clients. It was really cool seeing Hulk in there. And you guys know Hulk is my favorite superhero.
Obviously.
So I'm super excited about seeing a little more Bruce Banner. I'm also super confused about the whole Hulk situation. Like,
yeah, me too. The minute we saw him, I'm like, wait a minute, why is he back in Hulk? Like, because obviously after we saw him at the end of Shang-Chi, he was back in his human form. His arm was in a sling. I kind of have a theory though, because on the IMAX on that, you can kind of see in a clear shot that he's wearing some kind of device on his left wrist. And it kind of looks similar to the device worn by Doctor Strange in Multiverse of Madness, that depowering spell. So I'm wondering if that was a thing. Maybe they were trying to find a way to fix his arm, and Wong gave that to him so that way they could fix it. And now he's fully healed in his right arm, because obviously as a Hulk, it wasn't. They couldn't really do anything for it. Yeah. So
I'm also thinking this might take place during the blip, right? Like, it could have taken place before even Shang-Chi, before even.
Yeah, that's the thing too. Maybe it took place before, maybe a lot after. I don't know.
Yeah. So there's still obviously a lot of questions around it. I know a lot of people are not happy about the spotty CGI. So I hope it still has a lot of time for production before the show comes out. I don't know how much they can actually do in post-production as far as CGI goes. So I hope they really get it together. Because she's a lawyer, I hope to see my second favorite superhero, Daredevil, on there. So I think just overall I'm excited for it. I don't think it's at the level of excitement that I was for like Loki, for example, or even WandaVision when it was first coming out, or any of these other shows like Moon Knight. I'm not as excited for it in that sense, but I mean, we're just grown accustomed to having Marvel content continuously coming in. So seeing She-Hulk, I'm excited for it. I think it'll be pretty good, and I'm hoping for more of a comedic turn.
Definitely the way it looks like they're going. But what do you think about the trailer, Ryan?
I think he kind of hit it on the mark. Like, the trailer doesn't seem like something to like super hype you, but at the same time, it does grab your interest. Again, the CGI does need to be polished. It would be nice to see a Marvel-based show that doesn't hit like that platform of not too seriousness, because I feel like that's the tone they're going on with the last few things.
Yeah.
Just to get some change of pace would be good. Just to differentiate from the other shows would be great as well. And like you said, another appearance by Matt Murdock would be great, because we already seen him in No Way Home. It's also not confirmed that if that's going to be official MCU, or if that's going to stay in the Sonyverse, or whatever's going to go on. So, yeah. But I am excited to see what comes out from it. I think because She-Hulk is one of like more of the B-C listers on the list, I think they could have more to write on, because I feel like with Marvel, when it comes to those type of characters, they really do a really good job with them.
Yeah, even with Frogman, I mean, he's like D-list. I would say, I know we talked about this on a previous podcast about El Muerto. I think Frogman is actually more well-known than El Muerto, and he has his own series. Yeah. But Marvel was very purposeful in only making one Frogman series. And even at the end of the comic book, at the end of the run, it says, there you go, guys. We did it, and we're not going to do any more Frogman series. so he's that type of character, and I hope that we see Marvel actually do well by him, do well by She-Hulk. Just how we've been seeing lately in the DC universe, right? Like with Peacemaker and all that. I think because it's a lesser known character, they can kind of go out and do more with these characters. Even She-Hulk, I'd say She-Hulk is a known character, but again, it's a lesser known character, and
definitely.
Yeah, so people don't know precisely like what to expect from it.
She's a known character by association with the Hulk.
Yeah. I think that's the best way to put it. Yep.
Yeah. What did you think, Jimmy?
I'm looking forward to it, but I'm not super excited. I expect this to be a little bit more humorous, a little more I don't want to say frivolous, but not quite as serious or like, intense stakes. I expect this to be more of like a fun, nice, breezy little series with some good comedy elements of it in it. Hopefully some playfulness in there too. I'm not as excited about this as I was like about Moon Knight or Falcon and the Winter Soldier or any of those, but it should be interesting. It should be fun, but the CGI does look a little wonky here.
Definitely.
So hopefully they do improve it, like you guys said.
Yeah. It's funny too because I think in the span of my life, I only met one person that was a She-Hulk fan. It was a person that I used to work with when I worked at 85 Bakery. And I remember her being like, "Oh yeah, I'm a big She-Hulk fan," and I'm like, "What? Like who? Like nobody likes She-Hulk? Like what?" So I think with this, I just didn't know what to expect with it. It does seem like it's gonna be more lighthearted, more comedic, and a little bit plain. She definitely seems like she has a strong personality and is gonna be an interesting person. I don't know so much about this actress. Is it Tatiana Maslany, whatever her name is, but she seems like she's fitting for this character, and we're going to be getting a lot of the Hulk in it too, so that part is cool. The one thing that did catch my eye is I'm wondering that maximum security prison that is in the opening shots of this trailer, I'm wondering if this is the MCU's version of the Cube. In the comics, the Cube is a SHIELD black site in the Nevada desert designed to house gamma-powered inmates, and it's also the home base of the Thunderbolts. That's it, kind of like what they were going for, kind of the thing, what it looked like. So I'm wondering if that can be, and obviously we know that that's also where Emil Blonsky Abomination is going to be. So I'm wondering if they're also going to be sending up for Thunderbolts. I mean, we know William Hurt had tragically passed away recently, so he wouldn't be back they're not going to have that General Ross back. So I'm wondering if that can also be something where they're hinting at with the Thunderbolts. And,
yeah. So even with that prison, I don't know if you remember in Shang-Chi when Wong was fighting Abomination, when he opens up the portal, you actually see that exact same cage in the background in Shang-Chi. So obviously they already had it. And maybe we'll even see a little bit of Wong in here, since it seems like there was a focus on Tim Roth. And I love that actor. He's one of my favorite actors. So I'm really hoping to get a lot of Abomination in this. Maybe even like at a level of like Hannibal Lecter status, where maybe he's just in the prison and helping out She-Hulk or helping out Hulk find some other bad guy. So I think it'd be really cool. And but yeah, I'm as you can tell, I'm super excited about it.
Maybe Abomination Hulk round 2.
I mean, Tim Roth is a great actor, and I don't think he's ever done anything like this before.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see what he does with it. We're getting like really good actors in these series, though. It seems like the longer Marvel goes on, the more a lot of like really serious actors want to get involved with superhero stuff.
Yeah, because it's slowly expanding. It's expanding away from just like the pure action, like almost like childish themes. So I think because it's getting into, I mean, Ryan kind of alluded to it, how lately all these series have been getting super serious and like talking about loss and like very introspective. So I think because we're starting to see more of those characters come from the comic books, it attracts actors that really want to portray those types of characters.
Oscar Isaac, Ethan Hawke.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good examples. And moving on from that, we also got another trailer for season 3 of The Boys, which will feature many new characters. Obviously, one of the most that we're looking forward to is Jensen Ackles' Soldier Boy, an obvious Captain America parody. With all these straightforward superhero stories in media, does this show feel like a little bit of a breath of fresh air?
I've only seen some of the first season, so I have to say I haven't seen it all, but I think so, because I think with superheroes being like the dominant form of media, I think there has to be a variety of superhero storytelling. There has to be the dark stuff that deals with trauma. Then there should be lighthearted stuff too. So yeah, I think it fits.
The Boys is just all action though. It's like it has really funny like comedic moments, and then it's just like super dark and gory. And I don't know, like it's almost like a genre of its own. Like, and I think, you need that to kind of expand the superhero genre, right? Instead of keeping superhero genre just like in one bubble, you have all these different types of genres within that. And I mean, I think The Boys is gonna do well. It's done really well the first 2 seasons. We also got the animated series for The Boys, which was pretty good. If you guys haven't seen it yet, and I definitely
Diabolical.
recommend it. So it's I like it. I like The Boys, and I actually didn't read the comic books, so I'm not coming from like a perspective of having read the comic books and like I want to see what their version of it is. I'm purely enjoying it just from what they're giving us, right?
Okay.
And I enjoy it. I enjoy it from that perspective. I think the actors are on point. The guy that plays Homelander, like he's really good at. It's really easy to hate him. So and he plays that like creepy superhero like really well. So I definitely am looking forward to the next season.
What about you, Ryan?
So the way I see The Boys, I mean, going off season 1, I read the comics. I read Herogasm. I watched season 1 and 2. I think season 1 was perfect in terms of like it was the right time to release something like that. It was the breath of fresh air people needed. Because the Boys came out before Invincible, which was more like Invincible was also like more of like a, even though it's its own thing, it still kind of highlights the satiristic of superhero genre. And then The Boys just took that to the next level. So, but The Boys was the first one to come out on, a platform to watch. Try not to run circles around this topic, but it was great. Season 2 takes that to the next level. The violence goes up, like the explicit content goes up. I feel like season 2, as good as much as I enjoyed it, but to look at it through a neutral standpoint, I think it kind of pushes that edginess like right at the border. So I don't know what they're going to do with season 3. I don't know if they want to keep it at that tone, they want to make it worse, or they want to make it more lighter because they're introducing Jen's ankles. In terms of the comics, though, the comics are extremely explicit. They're like, if you think the show is bad, the comic is if you think the show is bad, the comics is just like that much worse in terms of like graphic content. In terms of the story, season 1 went pretty linear despite like a few casting differences, and season 2 they completely changed Stormfront in terms of like how the comic went. I do like the change though, because it's just more adapted to like a modern audience. But at the end of season 2, I have no idea what's going to happen in season 3. I do like the fact that they're improving the image of Billy Butcher. Billy Butcher in the comic is just a hardcore edgelord that just wants revenge. Like it even goes to the point that like he makes his dog do like violent and graphic things to other people and heroes and stuff. It was like just for the sake of the shock value. But I do like that they're giving him like more of a backstory in the show.
Definitely. I feel that same way too. I think when this show was first announced in 2018, I had read up on the comics, and I was actually pretty shocked because just with the level of graphicness in there and just the level of depravity and all of the ultra violence, obviously we had been accustomed to stuff like that. You expect things to get a little bit violent, but I was like, oh God, they're definitely not going to go this route with this show. And it tackles some of the themes and some of the ideas, but it's something where it goes a little bit in its own route and it kind of does its own thing. So I think it is going to be good, but where it'll go from here and where exactly, it seems like it's just going to be playing off of Homelander's increasing instability, which is something that has been very apparent from the first season. It just seems like it's going to be dialing it up way more. So really excited. Obviously, if you're a big Batman fan, you love anything with Jensen Ackles. So really excited to see the kind of role, and he seems like it's gonna be going against a different kind of role for him, or somewhere that's gonna be a little bit more crazy. So that part seems really cool too. I was really excited to hear that he was gonna be in this. But overall, I think it's gonna be a good show, and I think it's a good season. And then it is a breath of fresh air, but like Eric was saying, it still focuses a lot on the violence. So while with that in mind, I think it's gonna go a good route, honestly.
Okay.
And then moving on from that, it was just recently announced that MODOK was canceled by Hulu, which sucks, as once you get past the parody comedic aspect of the show that it was going for, it was pretty good. Ultimately, it didn't have the ratings and popularity to ensure its future. I think we kind of had talked about that when we were reviewing it. I think Eric had said it's probably not going to get a second season. It just didn't get the kind of ratings and didn't exactly get the kind of fans that it was looking for. And also, moving on from that, season 2 of Loki will start filming next month with the entire cast of season 1 returning, which is good news as Kevin Feige revealed Loki was the studio's most viewed series on Disney+. And lastly, 20th century...
Wait, before you move on, I did want to say something. I actually really liked MODOK a lot, and I'm actually kind of sad that we're not going to get it back. I thought it was funny. I thought it was very entertaining. And then I thought also as it went along, I think it got a lot more depth as it went along. And I think that was a really compelling storyline. And it was left very unresolved. So I'm a little sad. And I kind of knew it wasn't going to get picked up just because I don't hear anybody talking about it. It never had fanfare.
Yeah.
But I think it deserved better than the fate it got. I really liked MODOK.
Yeah. That's what kind of makes me worry also about Hitmonkey. Because I liked Hitmonkey on Hulu, and it's a cartoon, Marvel, it's TVMA, and so I think they're slowly starting to realize that maybe that type of ultra violence relating to Marvel won't necessarily work in the same way that it may have worked for like The Boys, right? But then going back to MODOK, I think it's also that like you said, Nick, the first couple episodes it started off and it was just kind of slow. It was comedic, but at the same time, it took a few episodes in to pick up. And let's be honest, if you don't catch someone in the first 2-3 episodes, you're going to lose them.
Definitely.
Right? Unless they're already a fan, like season 2 or season 3, sure, they'll stick around for a little longer. But if you don't grab someone's attention in the first few episodes, they're not going to go back and watch more.
I think that's too bad because I think a lot of shows take a few episodes for you to know whether or not you're going to get into it. I try to give every show at least a handful of episodes before I decide what I think about it.
See, I go off of the pilot episodes, honestly. And I think it's important because people, like these companies, hire specific directors and people just to do pilot episodes. And because that's what they specialize in. And then a show like, for example, like Peacemaker, I watched the first episode and I was hooked. Okay. Right? Moon Knight, I watched the first episode and I was hooked. And honestly, we live in a world where there's so much streaming, there's so much content out there that if you don't hook someone right away, they're just gonna move on to the next thing real quick.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially with this show, because as much as I tried, the only reason we really reviewed it was because at the behest of Eddie, who had said, "Hey, MODOK is out. You guys got to review it." And I'm like, oh my god, I don't know. More so because I was a fan of.
I'm glad I saw.
Well, more so because I was a fan of MODOK from the comics, and obviously this was not going the route of something faithful. And I was really hoping we would get this character in the MCU. And I think I was just approaching it from that bitter fan of, this isn't going to be like what I know originally. But honestly, after a few episodes, I was like, I can't help but to laugh. This show is hilarious. So I'm hooked on it, honestly.
Yep.
Nick, you need to give things a chance before you start sipping the haterade.
Haterade.
I mean, you're right. Definitely going with the open mind, as they say, right? But it does suck because I did feel like that whole thing where we talked about I felt like this was more of a breath of fresh air than The Boys because, like Eric was saying, like it's just all violence when you get down. It's just not what we're accustomed to, but when you get down to it, it's a lot of violence. This one actually was a obviously parody and comedic aspect, and I think that was something that was very telling of trying to do something new and trying to do something different. Maybe it might not be what you were expecting if you're a fan of the comics and fan of the source material, but overall it was trying to create a different story and trying to do something new, unlike what we knew in the past. So sucks that this happened, but maybe now we can see this character in the MCU in his true form now or sometime soon.
Yep.
Okay.
And last but not least, 20th Century Studios is developing a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen reboot for Hulu, a film. Let's hope it's a little better than the 2003 version, and we'll see what Alan Moore, the writer of the...
I'm sure he's so excited right now. I'm sure he's jumping for joy at the announcement.
I mean, you know what to say, when you're at rock bottom, the only way you can go is up.
Unless you just go further into the deeper depths of rock bottom, I'm assuming
that was a a film.
That probably needs
It
to be
was a
something we
movie.
review at some point, just
I
because of.
well,
I remember
do you
watching it
the
as a kid.
trailers? Like those trailers got you hooked, and then when people actually watch the actual movie, you're like, what?
You know, it's something funny. Sean Connery actually took the role in that because he was upset that he turned down The Matrix and Lord of the Rings. And he thought that maybe this would be like that. He said it was like he made a big mistake by turning down those two franchises. And then
Well, I know Lord of the Rings he turned down because he didn't understand the plot, right?
Yeah, he didn't understand. Like
He didn't understand like all of the medieval stuff, and I don't know about the Matrix. Why he turned? Was he originally
turned
looked
down
at as Morpheus or?
yeah.
Well, to be honest, too, like the whole thing about the Matrix as well is like if someone pitched to you the Matrix story, you'd be like, huh? Like especially during that time, like the internet was brand new and all this stuff was.
Well, especially someone like Sean Connery, you know, he was in his early 70s at that time, so I don't think he was gonna really comprehend and really sit down and have an actual conversation on trying to understand the plot. If it's just something where he's lost in the first 5 minutes, he's
the
out
Matrix
of there. But
is completely understandable why he turned it down. Like heck, Will Smith turned it down. So yeah,
He didn't get League of Extraordinary Gentlemen either, but he thought maybe it didn't matter that he didn't get it because he was wrong about the two other things.
well, third time's not a charm in this case.
He was just like, I retired, guys.
And that just sucks, is given how illustrious his career was, and that ended up being his final movie.
Sorry.
Like when you think about it out loud, that's just crazy.
I mean, he could. It was his decision to retire. He could have busted a Christopher Lee and kept going till his last breath. But yeah,
you got a point. But it's gonna be interesting. Maybe we'll revisit that 2003 movie as hard as it will be. I think it will be harder to watch that than Morbius, but we'll maybe we'll make that sacrifice for your viewing pleasure someday.
Oh, Morbius! Oh man.
Okay. As much as I kid and I make fun of it, I really hope that it's good. I don't really have high hopes, to be honest.
Oh, so you haven't watched it?
What? The new lead.
He's talking about the reboot.
Okay. Oh, the reboot.
No. I've seen the original one.
Okay.
The reboot. I hope that it's good, only because I mean I know Alan Moore doesn't like the adaptations, but I love Alan Moore. I think he's a brilliant writer.
Okay.
I love the concepts he comes up with and his stories and the ideas behind it. So I think it's possible to make something good out of it. I just have serious doubts, but we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, we live in an era now where they're at least attempting to make a lot of these superhero stories good and cohesive. So I think at least from that perspective, it might not be something where it's very faithful to the comics, but as long as the story is good, the acting is good, the cinematography, all that is good, I think we're. But then again, anything is going to be better than the 2003 version by comparison. So, and this is actually something I didn't realize until I was talking with Jimmy a couple days ago. But this month is the 10-year anniversary of the Avengers, and obviously its impact and legacy cannot be understated. As obviously it's what proved to studios a shared universe can be extremely profitable, and these adapting a lot of these stories from the comics can work in a live action setting. But does this first big crossover comic book movie hold up as a quality film a decade later, or do you guys look at it a little bit differently?
I'll be honest, dude. I really liked it at the time. I actually have a sentimental thing attached to that movie. I'm not going to go into that here, but I liked it at the time. I just think after like Infinity War and Endgame, it's kind of difficult for me to go back and revisit that Avengers movie because I don't know. There's something in there that is lacking for me, and it's even more so in the sequel, the Age of Ultron.
I mean, we could make those two connections to what's related to them, but
yeah.
I definitely feel the same way with Jimmy. All that being said, what I do feel like what this film has going for it and what works. But yeah, I mean, it was the first time we were seeing these characters interact with each other, and we had that build up from the first Iron Man up until here. It was the end of phase 1. And I think what Joss Whedon does really well is his dialogue is very witty, and also there's a lot of tense moments that make those other moments between these characters feel very real and feel like we're getting to know them, their personalities, their moral and ethical principles. And obviously that was something that was very apparent. That was the start of that Iron Man Cap beef, or that little, like, they would have their little squabbles here and there. And
Yeah.
That was very apparent. So I think like that's what it has going for it. When I think of the movie, I think of the interactions with the characters. But I'm also wondering if that's just because we haven't seen them interact with each other. But the dialogue, it does work well in certain places. But other than that, I don't really revisit this movie, as I was just telling Ryan recently. I don't feel like the action is great. Nothing really stands out to me.
I think it's just, when I see it now, it strikes me as so lightweight compared to the Avengers movies that came after, and the action scenes are a little bit more like fluffy. They're a little bit more
They're
like,
very yeah. Like I don't want to say like low budget. It's just very like
not low budget, but
I don't know if you can say that to action scene, but like action scene's cliche.
They're just they're just boring,
itself,
and nothing really stands out about them. I don't feel like they are anything that is really telling of the characters. That, you know, the fighting sequences are just the normal cut and run, and you don't exactly stay on those shots for long takes. You don't really have anything in there that tells you more about these characters. I just feel like they're just very generic and very basic.
Yeah. I do appreciate what the Avengers. I do appreciate it still had some use of practical effects because we still see Iron Man in that movie. He still looks great. But furthermore, to push on the Avengers, in terms of the story, yeah, it is kind of like a cliche story. It's like you got a team of people who are fighting or disagreeing with each other, and then they got to stand together at the end. Because that's how the basis of this movie goes. Does it still stand well to this day? I don't know. I'm gonna say no, but I'm gonna say yes because, you know, nostalgic value is very, very strong.
Right.
There's a lot of things that you find in this movie that are not in the other movies.
It's true.
Yeah.
Look, I'll be honest. I have a connection with the movie that's purely nostalgic, and I'll tell you the reason why is that movie actually came out the day that my dad passed away, and my dad was a big Marvel fan. Like, he loved like Iron Man and Spider-Man were his favorite characters, and he used to make drawings of like Thor and Iron Man and the Hulk and all that. So I saw that movie late because I was very upset, but at the time it had a sentimental thing to me. It like meant a lot after. Like, I had to see it a couple weeks late because I was not in a good mental state. But I kind of have a sentimental attachment to it because it of what it means to me. But I don't love it like I used to. But I do have certain nostalgia for it, just strictly for that.
What do you think, Eric? You haven't given any kind of insider opinion yet.
I think I haven't said anything because I kind of disagree with you guys. I still love that movie.
Okay.
I still have it as my probably top 3 MCU movies.
Really?
Oh, really?
And the reason is, sure, it could be possibly nostalgic, but I've rewatched it so many times, and I've been able to share it. Specifically, I think it's sentimental value too. I've been able to share it with my son, and being able to like watch that movie with him and seeing how excited he gets at like Thor fighting Iron Man, and then like when they all come together when the Hulk comes out and he hits the alien, like all that, and how excited he gets about it. It just kind of brings up that excitement in me again. And sure, we could talk about maybe it's like dumbed down for a superhero movie, but I think that was the purpose. The purpose of the Avengers was to do this for the very first time, right? Like, and I remember when I first watched the Avengers, I went to an event, and it was me, my now wife, she was my girlfriend at the time, and my sister, and we went to an all-day event where they showed all the movies, and it ended at midnight with the premiere of the Avengers. And I really remember that event. I loved it. We had so much fun. There were people that were like in costume, people that were dressed up as SHIELD agents that were doing like the whole event. And it was just like one of the coolest events that I had been to. And finally seeing what the comic books that I have read and how they came together as the Avengers in the comic books, and seeing that play out on screen, it was just amazing to me. And like I said, 10 years later, I still continuously watch this movie because sure, it doesn't have the same level of depth, the same action as like the later Avenger movies, but as this movie itself, it was the first to do it, and I think there's value in that. And I like to compare it sometimes to like the earlier Star Wars movies, because that was kind of the first time that we saw that happen on screen. And I remember like my dad showing me the Star Wars movies and how excited he got over them, right? And you can look at the Star Wars movies now and say, oh yeah, they're cheesy, it's overdone. You can clearly tell like a lot of stuff about them, like, and people will say that, and I've heard people say that, but at the same time, it was something new.
That's true, but I will say I think the original Star Wars movies hold up for me.
Star Wars movies hold up very well.
Yeah, for me, I get the cheesiness of it, but I think there's a certain kind of magic there that transcends the cheesy elements.
Well, that's what I see with the Avengers.
Okay.
Just because it was the first time we saw characters from different movies come together in this way. I mean, that movie is what made Kevin Feige the most successful executive producer of all time.
Yeah. I mean, that's really the movie that put his name on the map. Like, after that movie, everybody knew Kevin Feige.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, it completely changed the superhero genre. Like, Warner Brothers has been trying to catch up ever since. For the past 10 years, they've been trying to catch up. And they're still at the forefront of it because of this movie. Yeah. Right? Like, it kind of peaked. It didn't peak there. It created this, like, open world of Marvel, and we saw the possibilities of what we can see in the future. Yeah. If it wasn't for this, we wouldn't have seen Daredevil and Spider-Man. We wouldn't have seen Spider-Man in Civil War. We wouldn't have seen like all these different interactions and have this universe that we have now, and that like I love so much. Yeah. And because of that, again, you can say it's nostalgic, but I think it still holds up, and I'm still able to go back, watch it, enjoy it, and really, really appreciate what was done there, and I'll be watching it into the future, several years, decades.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, like the legacy of it is undeniable. Like, it's such a huge part of the superhero genre and moving it forward. I guess it's for me, when I try to revisit it, it doesn't hold the same type of oomph that it had the first time I saw it. Like, I don't know. I think what Joss Whedon did was fine, but I think the Russo brothers kind of like elevated it a lot.
Took it to the next level.
Just made it feel so much more, I don't know how to put it, like substantial, that like when I go back and it looks almost like baby steps. And to be fair, it had to do that. It had to crawl before it could walk or run. Yeah. So I get that, but it's just for those reasons, especially with a lot of the stuff that's came out since. And even before, I think even like Iron Man is a better movie than the Avengers. I think the first Iron Man still holds up. I don't think
very well.
I don't think there's any nostalgia there for why it holds up. I think Iron Man holds up just because it's a damn solid movie to this day.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to revisit it and get excited the way that I used to. Like it seems to be lacking something. But it is important, and it is, like I said, it is very a huge part of the superhero genre, and it would not be where we are today. And like I said, my sentimental attachments to it are attached to something very sad too.
Yeah. See, I still get excited over it. Like seeing that the famous scene where like all the Avengers are together and the camera like whips around them. Like I still get excited, and I get like all giddy like watching that over and over again. Or the part where the Hulk says like, "My secret is I'm always angry," and he like turns around and punches the alien. Like I get so excited. It's so dope to see that again. Like I can keep on watching it because of that. Like it hasn't like let down since I watched it the first time.
But what about as a quality film? Obviously, this doesn't hold up for you still, right? And that's just more the discussion that we're having right now is just from that perspective. Obviously, the nostalgia is always going to be there, but do you feel this holds up as a quality film still?
Yeah. Well, what do you define as a quality film? Like, because I think it has a solid script still. I think it has a solid plot, and I still think it has like a solid resolution in the end. Like, so the acting is on point. They're the same characters they were in the other movies. What doesn't make it a quality film?
I think to put more input on it, like if I had to define it, you hit the points on it. I think I also want to add, like, obviously, during this time, computer generation is what makes a quality film, but you can't really grade it. And it's actually really good for that movie compared to like some other films in the MCU. To add to that, I do think cinematography is also an addition to what makes a good film. Editing, a lot of the stuff that's behind the computer really adds.
Yeah, I think
one thing I don't like about the Avengers is the cinematography style. It's the thing about Joss Whedon. He really does. He treats it like it's a television show. And that's what he's really good at. like if he's really good at if you follow Joss Whedon, you followed his works of Firefly, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel, all that stuff, and he's good at that. And despite his controversy, he's good at that. And the Avengers, that's the one thing that I hate watching to this day is when you put it to, like, I know I'm watching this on like an OLED 56-inch whatever, and you're watching it and you still see, like, I studied medium film, so when you look at it, you just see all these like TV style camera angles.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think I don't think it's that cinematic. That's the thing. Like you said, it has a very, I don't know, TV quality. I mean, it's not low budget. Like, it's definitely not.
No, it's not low budget.
But a lot of the directing of it reminds me more of a television series, and
it's also the color saturation.
Yeah, it's the visual style doesn't work for me that much anymore.
It's not really like a Marvel problem. It's like a Joss Whedon problem, because like if you watch like the theatrical Justice League, you can see where it really shows where the colors, he wants it a certain way.
Yeah,
like super saturated, not as dynamic. For me, that bothers me, but it like it's just like I'm kind of just nitpicking here in terms of that. I do think some of the jokes in Avengers are outdated.
Yeah.
I'll give you that. When they were doing all the little like quirky jokes and stuff, I was like, this isn't really how these characters work in the comic books. Like like Thor and Captain America, even Tony Stark doesn't really make those types of jokes. Like I was watching, I was like, why are they all talking like Spider-Man, like while they're fighting?
Yeah,
I did notice that, but
it's like that quirkiness, that kind of forced quirkiness that's very much Joss Whedon style.
But it's I mean, very well, Avengers is very well known for that, right? And the MCU at the time, that's what they were known for too. And like you're talking about, like the color saturation. Yeah, these were very colorful movies in general. Like you have Captain America and
if you watch Iron Man,
Thor.
the color saturation is actually very cinematic.
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, I think in Iron Man, yeah. But I think I'm coming from like holistically, right? Like looking at Captain America too. That was a very like World War piece, and then all the colors in that, and then Thor from like super fantasy. Like I think the way that Joss Whedon brought together those different essentially genres into one cohesive movie, I think he had to go with a specific color style, and I think he had to go with a specific cinematography style too. And that's what he was doing, right? Like he couldn't do all the same angles that you were seeing done in like Iron Man in the same way that you would see like Captain America and Thor. They're all different directors. So maybe he had to kind of pick that like middle ground between everything and just focus on the story. And Avengers was very much that. It was, the focus was on the story and bringing together characters. And I'll give you, it wasn't very focused on cinematography, but I don't think that was the intention of the movie in the first place.
That's true. That's not the intention of the movie. And I guess this is where, like I said, all of this is very subjective. It depends on how important those elements are to you in a film, because in most movies, for me, the cinematography and the editing and stuff like that is important. There are times when it's not important, mostly for me in comedy movies. Like that's a good example. If a comedy movie does not have to be shot particularly well, as long as it makes me laugh a lot, then that's really the only threshold I need for it. Yeah. But I do think action films should have a little bit more of a cinematic quality to it. And the color palette of this is not appealing to me. I don't find it appealing.
Yeah. Actually, going back to what Nick said too about Avengers 2, it does have lackluster action in terms of like actual fight choreography.
Yeah.
I still feel like the pinnacle of like Marvel action choreography, like, would be the Winter Soldier. A lot of I mean, Shang-Chi did a good job too, but that's a particularly martial arts Marvel film. Going back to the Avengers 2, well, I mean the Avengers, not the Avengers 2.
The Avengers also.
I think we give Joss Whedon too much credit for Avengers 1 too. Take note, he didn't particularly write Avengers 1. He had full control of Avengers 2, and we already know how that turned out.
Yep.
But just specifically,
that's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I think even like there are so many directors that could have done Avengers 1 and it would have done well, just because it was all these superheroes coming together.
Yeah. I think I do have to agree with you. I think the script was in the right direction. those quirky parts were probably like just like Whedon flavor, I would
Yes.
say.
Yeah,
But
that's exactly
I
what it
think
feels like.
you're right. I think you could assign another like particularly blockbuster director with the same script, and they could probably do a decent job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as you
Yeah.
have the right
And
budget for it.
and I do want to say also that like cinematography isn't everything, right, for an action movie. And we're seeing this most recently with the new Doctor Strange, with Doctor Strange 2, had incredible cinematography, and we're seeing so many people hate this movie.
Okay.
Right. And we were
but-
talking about that earlier, where you either like love it or you hate it.
To be
And-
fair, I think that movie is hated based on expectations that fans made for it, not the quality.
I don't even.
Yeah, but my point is it has good cinematography, and that alone does not save it.
Do you think the movie's bad?
I gave it an 8 out of 10 on our last podcast.
Well, that's a relatively good movie.
Yeah.
Because I think people will a lot of, from what I heard from like word of mouth, from what I've heard, people don't like it because of the, not because of cinematography, but because of the violence.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the number one thing I heard as a complaint, because of the violence.
Yeah, is what I'm saying. Cinematography is not going to be a complaint, but that won't save it from people hating it.
That's
Yeah,
true.
but
Right?
I don't.
I'm just kind of doing like the opposite, right?
Yeah, play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cinematography does not make, cinematography alone does not make a good movie.
No, it doesn't, but I do think it is important for a movie. And look, I know I'm not in the consensus opinion about Doctor Strange, given how much I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
honestly think that people are not and like I could be wrong, but I don't think a lot of people are judging that movie fairly. I think people are judging it based on a version of the movie that they made up in their head instead of what the movie actually is. And I don't think that's a good way to watch movies, is not to meet the artist on the level that they're trying to make, to try to base it on your expectations.
I think I have to
Yeah.
agree with you in that
Yeah.
point too. It's
Mhm.
especially when Marvel was using Sam Raimi as like, you know, a hype up, and then people were expecting a movie like the Spider-Man films, and
Yep.
what they got was an Evil Dead 4.
Essentially,
But I
right?
love
That's true.
I love the way Sam Raimi did this movie. I love the shots. I love the creativity, because like, you know, when especially like, I feel like for film students or people who are particularly studying film, like this is a pinnacle movie in terms of blockbuster.
Oh yeah.
Just because of like how creative
Mhm.
this movie was made.
Yeah. I
Definitely.
think coming, I guess, going back to the Avengers, and obviously not being like a film buff or anything, I just enjoy watching movies. I think the way it was, Avengers 1 was directed, the script and everything, including cinematography, just made it more accessible.
Yeah.
Made it more accessible to everyone.
yeah.
And I don't remember how it was critically panned at the time. I don't remember what the Rotten Tomato score was.
It received good reviews when it came
Yeah,
out.
it was
Seems like
like
amazing
9
reviews, actually. I think like
it was
in
like
the
9 out of
90s.
10, 9 out of
Yeah.
10. Some people put 10 out of 10.
It had like 90-something% on Rotten Tomatoes. It was relatively well received for.
I just
Yeah.
remember this was the movie that like pissed off James Cameron.
Oh yeah, but
Well, I mean, he was still Avatar was still the highest box office of all time, so he was okay.
And that was the thing he always says, like, oh yeah, you guys love the Avengers, but you know, Avatar. He's even saying it to this day. He says that Avatar 2 is gonna break Endgame.
I'm gonna be honest with
we'll
you.
see.
I know this is a detour, but here's the thing about Avatar. I don't think that movie left much of a cultural impact on, like, in terms of people discussing it. Like, if you think about it, The Dark Knight came out a year before Avatar, and it didn't make as much money as
It did?
Avatar. But I remember people discussing it a lot more and quoting it. And to this day, it's still
It was a very
Yeah.
memeable film.
Oh yeah,
Today, The Dark Knight is a pop culture phenomenon.
Yeah.
I don't really see people talking about Avatar, quoting it. The only thing they talk about is the technology. I'm not convinced that this movie is going to be the blockbuster hit that James Cameron and a lot of people are expecting it to be.
Dude,
It'll do $1 billion
I remember
for
seeing
sure,
the
but
trailer at, like, not, I know we're steering away from the subject, but I remember seeing the trailer in Multiverse of Madness, and I was in the theater, and all of us are watching the trailer, and then you always have those hardcore James Cameron fans, just like you have those hardcore Marvel fans.
Mhm.
So we're watching the trailer, and then there's like this group of 6, maybe like on a couple rows in front of me, just start like shouting, like, yeah! And it goes to show, like, he does have a dedicated fan base.
He does.
But
And look, I love James
I think-
Cameron. I
I
consider
think
myself a James Cameron fan, but I'm not really excited for the new Avatar.
I think Avatar. Yeah, I don't want to change the discussion of this podcast. Maybe we could do like another one of the Avatar, or whatever. But
But
yeah, he has a huge following. Has a big, and then I don't know. People always like to connect. Every time a Marvel movie comes out, or specifically Avengers movie, people like to compare it to like Avatar.
Yeah.
Like, oh, did it do this? Did it do that?
I don't think it's gonna outgross the Avengers movies. I don't. That's my honest opinion.
Yeah.
I still think
Yeah.
the Avengers is still gonna be the box office king
Yeah.
when the dust settles.
But going back to what Eric had said, I do feel like this movie is rewatchable, but purely from that nostalgic perspective. And
Yeah.
this is the first time we saw all these characters together. And then when you talk also about its impact, its legacy, I'd also got to put in the top 5 MCU films. I wouldn't put it in the top 3, but top 5, I would put it in. And honestly, too, a lot of people don't remember this, but this was only the second comic book film of all time after The Dark Knight to break $1 billion in the box office. These movies beforehand weren't doing that well. I think Thor and Captain America, the first Avenger, I think they only did around 300-400 million. And then this movie came out, and now it's set that standard that all
that's not doing well by the standards of now. By most standards,
exactly
those
yeah.
are big numbers to make.
Yeah, I think at
Yeah.
the time,
Yeah.
during that time, if you broke 300 mil, that was like a big win for you.
Yeah. But then this movie came out, it did like a 1.5 or 1.8, whatever it was, it did. And now all MCU films were doing around 800, 900 million as an average. So I do, from that perspective of talking about its impact, its legacy, I definitely got to give it credit for that. This is and I'm going back and I think to my 21-year-old self and how cool it was to see, as Eric was talking about, that shot where the camera zooms around them as they're all coming into battle for the very first time. That part was really cool, and that awesome score plays. You definitely remember those moments and think of how awesome it was, and that this was something we were seeing that was groundbreaking. This is something that was going to usher in a new dawn, a new future, as much as James Cameron hated to admit it and didn't want to think about it, but it was true. It was here. The dawn of shared superhero universes were here, and we're still here today, 10 years later.
I think, yeah, a lot of what we have is an evolution of the Avengers movie. There's no denying that. Its impact and its legacy are not something that can be replaced. Even though I personally might prefer the Avengers, later Avengers, the Russo brothers ones by a lot, or like even the Winter Soldier. Those movies, just as much as I prefer them, they wouldn't exist without the Avengers. They needed to. That was the movie that proved that they were viable enough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So just in closing with that, do you guys feel that this movie still holds up to this day then?
I mean, look, I do think that it is a classic, regardless if I personally think it holds up, because its impact is too big. Any movie that endures for 10 years and its legacy is still being resounding, is still kind of like reverberating around comic book culture, I think it's undeniably a classic. Whether or not it holds up for you, it still is a big piece of film history, of comic book film history. I think those aspects of it are pretty undeniable.
What about you, Ryan?
I have to agree. As much as I like to comment about like the cheesiness and the quality of cinematography and the quirkiness of the film, it has a huge impact.
Mm-hmm.
Like none of the MCU would have existed if it wasn't for that movie. That movie could have flopped, and if that movie flopped, we would have no MCU.
That's true. Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
and I'm actually glad that movie did succeed, and I am pretty happy how the movie did during its time. During its time, I did love that movie. And to watch it today, I kind of just like skimmed through it, but I do think it's still worth the watch. If someone has never watched it, I would still recommend it for him, because why would you watch all these Marvel films, but you don't want to watch the one that got everything going after the first 3 superheroes?
Yeah. And obviously, this still holds up for you, obviously, Eric.
Yeah, it still holds up. I think it's not. I mean, obviously, I agree with Jimmy Ryan saying, and how important it is to superhero media in general. I personally think it still holds up. But again, that's just me coming from kind of an average viewer base, and it's what I like. I still laugh at it. It still makes me smile. It still gets me excited for specific scenes. So obviously, I still think it holds up. I don't think it's problematic yet. And I think I'll be watching it for least a few more years.
When is the Guardians of the Galaxy anniversary coming up? Because I think we should do a podcast about that. Because
That's my number one.
Two more
MCU
years.
film.
Yeah,
2014. So yeah.
2 years.
No, we can do an 8th anniversary. It doesn't have to be the
Eighth?
The only reason I say that is because that's like an older Marvel film that I don't think just holds up. I think is a damn near perfect movie.
Yeah.
But we'll say that for
Yeah.
another time.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much to Ryan for joining us today and offering
no
his
problem,
amazing insights. Definitely, and making sure to check out his 2 Instagram pages. He's a very talented photographer, has an awesome coffee business, and offer if you guys are into that sort of thing. So thank you so much to Ryan. This is the Heroes and Mutants podcast. We're going to see you guys next time. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, see you guys.